Hey, what's up, people? What's going on? It's the Black Quarterback Forum, BQF, me and my man Smeeze.
What up, people?
Back at it.
Bang, bang, Niner game.
Bang, bang, Niner game, baby. Y'all see what time it is up in here. Y'all know we've been spouting about the Ravens since day one. I told you he's a dedicated hardcore fan. I love him because of Lamar Jackson and so forth and so on. But anyway, they got it on. Y'all saw what happened, right? What happened?
I mean, as my man Chad would say, rock the baby to sleep, put the baby to sleep. That's what we did.
So, anyway, it's just one game. Ravens didn't win no Super Bowl. They didn't win no playoff game. Just one game. The 17 game season. So,
But one step closer to where we want to be.
right, it's one step closer. So, moving on, as we always do here at the BQF Black Quarterback Forum, blackqbsineffect.com website. We appreciate everybody who goes to the website and visit it. So, I appreciate that. But at this point in the season, we've covered black quarterbacks in depth, their playing performance. But right now, we're gonna start focusing on the ones that got an opportunity to win the Super Bowl. That'd be Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. Still they ain't played. They ain't nobody out yet. But so, but
But we know some ain't in.
well, right, some ain't here. In the NFC, of course, the two most that might have an opportunity to be Dak and Jalen. So I mean, currently Seattle's in the playoffs, but that could change here in the last week or two. So I don't think those would be the only options in the NFC. So, with that said, man, just some of the notes in the NFL this week. Russ is done, looks like in Denver, right? So they saw
That's
that
the
coming.
words out.
Yeah.
As, as I was telling you, that's the one thing I like about the NFL. Your guaranteed salary contract don't guarantee you a spot on the field. It might guarantee you a spot on the team, but not a spot on the field, as Russell found out these last 2 weeks. And not that Stidham's the answer. We just done with you,
Right.
more or less.
And they have been talking about that off and on all season, right? Since Peyton took over, some of
Yeah.
the things that have went on. And I guess the cooking's over for Russ. That last meal, hopefully it was a good one. Whatever. No, they lost, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They
I mean, he
lost.
had that stretch, so I get it. I was kind of not all the way on
They
board, but
lost.
they were kind of a
They
from
lost.
the back team because when they had that little 2, 3 game stretch winning, like I was like, oh, we might have something, but
I looked at my Denver Bronco T-shirt the other day. I was like, I should have wore it. It's too late now. It's too late.
so
Yeah. And then there was a couple black quarterbacks that came in and filled in for the Washington Commanders. Jacoby Brissett and Tyrod Taylor came back for the Giants. They both filled in, almost came back and won their games, but they did lose though. But they will be starting this week though. So we're going back and forth. We lose some spots, we gain some spots. That's how it's been all season long. So with I shouldn't say all season long, but throughout a little bit, I
yeah,
guess. So a
a little
couple
up and down,
injuries,
up and down.
and I hope CJ.
Dobbs moving around. He might be on the move again, maybe.
Who was that?
Dobbs.
Oh, Dobbs. Yeah, yeah,
Going
Dobbs.
from Cleveland to Cardinals to
Well,
Minnesota, might be on the move
I heard a
again.
quick thing about they trying to figure out who to start this weekend. I believe they haven't.
Minnesota,
Yeah, they haven't
that's a big
decided.
game. That's for the playoffs.
Right, they haven't decided. So
They didn't like what they saw from the other guy.
I could have misheard. I mean, there's just so much. And I don't have time. People, I'm not paid to listen to every sports story, but I think I heard something where they were trying to decide. Well, of course, I will look into it later on. I'm just saying, though. But
Yeah,
Minnesota, I'll be looking at the stats. Kirk has some stats. I keep
he
looking at the
did.
stat and
He
his
did.
stat. I'm like, Kirk, they was balling. And once they
They
got
were.
rid of the mistakes, you know, because they was turning the ball over crazy like at the
They
beginning of the
were.
season.
Beginning of the season, it was a
Yeah.
lot.
So, like I said, as we dribble down to the season, we're looking at the playoff teams, and then we looked at. Well, I did some research on some numbers, and I was sharing with my man Smeeze before we started, and we was looking at. I looked at the top four teams in each division, the division winners, top four teams: Cowboys, Niners, Eagles, and Lions in the NFC, and then in the AFC, of course, is Miami, Baltimore, Chiefs, and Jags. And so what I did was I looked at the quarterback, his stats, touchdown, interceptions, and then I took the top rusher for each team, and then the two top wide receivers, whether it was a tight end or a receiver. And by no surprise, Lamar Jackson is doing the most with the least. He is 76% And these numbers were raw. They ain't have every offensive player, all of them, but just like I said, the top two receivers, top one rusher, and the quarterback stats. And so when you added them all up and then divide the quarterback stats along by the total, Lamar was 76% of the team's offense. And he's the leading rusher as well as the leading passer. Now, here's the kicker for Lamar. His two top receivers are barely scraped. Zay, for as good as the young boy is, he's barely scraping in the 40s. And then Odell is 67, okay, as far as statistics among wide receivers. But Mark Andrews still had better stats at this time, even though he's been hurt since about week 10.
Yeah.
So, but then we looked at all of them. Nobody is doing the rest of them. Receivers in the top 10, top 15, running backs in the top one. I mean, but Lamar, he's doing the most with the least.
I would agree. I mean, looking at it, the one thing is the one common trend is almost every one of these quarterbacks has 1,000-yard receiver at this point in the season.
Yes.
Other than Trevor Lawrence and Lamar, they're the only two that don't have 1,000-yard receiver. The Lions have 1,000-yard receiver. 49ers have 1,000-yard receiver. Cowboys have 1,000-yard receiver. Eagles have 1,000-yard receiver. Dolphins got 2,000-yard receivers. Kelsey 924, but basically 1,000-yard receiver.
And these stats are a week old. This was
Before the Sunday. Now Trevor Lawrence, he had Christian Kirk 787, Ridley 781. But like Al said, Zay had 680, Odell had 519. And this is an interesting MVP race, like we were talking about as far as like the MVP race. Looking at these numbers and looking at everything, how much, and I mean, I think it kind of goes without saying, Lamar Jackson obviously is going to blow these numbers out the water because of the running, because of the passing. Like, obviously, he's a bigger part of the offense than any of these quarterbacks in the sense of the entire run pass scheme of things. But with Lamar, the lack of weapons, as some would say, I like to say the spreading around, because it's almost like, would you rather have 3 or 4 7 800-yard receivers or one 1,800-yard receiver? Fair question.
Right.
I like the 3 or 4 because with the Ravens attack, you don't know who's going to be open. Nelson Aguilar, you ain't heard nothing from him. He was cooking all Monday night.
Yeah.
All Christmas night, cooking wide open. You know what I mean? Like, he's not even mentioned. But the key factor to all of these is the 1,000-yard receiver thing stood out to me. And then secondly, the numbers across the board as a quarterback, which if Lamar wins MVP, the one knock is going to be he didn't have the numbers.
Yeah, those
of an MVP.
Passing
numbers of what your typical, prototypical MVP would have. But as of right now, with 2 games left, again, not counting last week's games, but I don't think Dak played that well last week. I'm not sure how many touchdowns he had, but I don't think he had a whole lot. He led the league with 28 touchdowns with 2 games left. So now 29 with 2 games left. The passing leader, they just cracking 3,000. Lamar got 3,100. So with numbers being slightly off,
Dak had 2 touchdowns.
Dak had 2. So Dak will now be at, what was that, 30? He had 28. So he did 30 touchdowns. With 2 games left, what are you going to end up with? 34, 35? Lamar might end up with 20, 21, but Lamar will have 6, 7 more touchdowns rushing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that
and
little bit of numbers.
Rushing touchdowns too. And
So for those little bit of numbers, look at the play on the field, the record, all of that, what that player means to the team.
Right. He is the most valuable player to the team. He's the ultimate. He's the ultimate dual threat right now, people. Period. And then I had to watch TV, and I don't know what ignoramus it was, talking about they not sure if they still believe in Lamar. Like, come on, man. What's not to believe? You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, who else you gonna believe in the AFC? Patrick Mahomes, my man Flacco, right? They Super Bowl winning. Yeah. So outside of those 3, and we talked about Josh Allen scary. No, they're scary. So I mean, so that's half. That's just half of the league. It's half of the AFC playoffs. But hey, he's still one of the top dogs. And I like my comparison with Lamar and Josh Allen. They came in the league same time. In my website, when I first started all this, I talked about how Lamar was disrespected. And I said the only player that came in with him at quarterback that may have played better than him at this point in time in his career is Josh Allen. But I said Josh Allen ain't got no MVP. But also, we don't want Lamar to have two MVPs and no Super Bowl trophy. So,
That's trending in the wrong direction.
no, it's kind of like, what do you want here?
It's a lot of proving, and we got a lot of quarterbacks that's about to make this playoffs race. Going back to that initial stat we pulled up, that if you've been to the Super Bowl and lost, you're not going back. And there's about 3 or 4 of them that's going to get into this little playoff race here. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, see, the Eagle fans, y'all don't want to hear that. That's a real stat, people. If you go to the Super Bowl for the first time and don't win, since 1999, quarterbacks have not been back.
We ain't talking about losing the
Right.
Super Bowl. Never been back to the Super Bowl.
Never been back. Right. If they go, Jalen Hurts is one of those. Okay. Jared Goff is the only two that's in it right now. I mean, Flacco went and won, people. Flacco went his first time and won.
Yep.
So, okay. But it's an interesting stat. So it's and people in the NFL they love stats, but they don't talk about that stat because that kind of like pours salt and it drowns the excitement and the
Well, it's tough to get behind a quarterback that been to the Super Bowl and didn't win. And there's a lot of them out there who across the league. Bengals. It's a few of them out there.
Well, the most Garoppolo and Burrow are hurt. Well, they've been, they ain't got it. They're still playing. They can make it right. Whatever this thing is.
Yeah.
So,
They thought Hurts was gonna make it right. They on the downfly.
we're speaking of, okay, so like I said, we dwindling down playoffs, right?
Yep.
As my man famously said, playoffs.
Playoffs. We're talking playoffs.
So, as it stands right now, let me just slide this over a little bit for me. So, and it might change a tad, but Ravens number 1 seed. So, with the teams in the spots they are, Colts is 7. They will play the Dolphins. Buffalo play the Chiefs. Browns will play the Jaguars. So, I think the Dolphins will beat the Colts.
I agree.
I'm still rocking with Patrick and them over
I think Buffalo wins that game.
I think Patrick got some like Swingali over Buffalo. It's like
they lost this year. They lost this year.
I know. I mean, in the playoffs.
Okay.
Talking about the playoffs, regular season. See, that's what I'm saying. Regular season.
They're gonna start catching and running routes and checking at the line. Come playoff
They gonna do all that. They
gonna
gonna put a chastity belt on Taylor Swift and tell her don't show up, don't come, and then they're gonna get it right. They're gonna get it right.
All right. And she could do the halftime show.
No. No, not at all. And then the Browns and the Jaguars. It was interesting with the Browns, right? We like Flacco because he took the Ravens to the bowl and got them, So and Flacco, he's interesting because they could get hot. And we talked about the efficiency of these teams and how they can just move the ball down the field. They got some good weapons in Cleveland. So
and he clicking with.
No, I'm taking
with Cooper too.
Yeah, I'm taking Cleveland.
Clicking.
Because I took Cleveland week 1 against Cincinnati, so I'm back on Cleveland. Although I thought Deshaun Watson would be steering this ship, but way wrong there.
I knew it wasn't going to be Deshaun Watson in week 18. I just didn't know it'd be Flacco. Yeah. But I knew it wasn't going to be Deshaun Watson. That was my one thing. How long he going to hold up? And that poses an interesting question for them next year if they do make a playoff run. What do they do next year? We got to say that's all. You could spend a whole series podcast on that by itself.
He knows
what they're going to do with Flacco.
He knows the contract in and out talk. He studies. He's a numbers guy. He does that for real work. So
Flacco to the Steelers next year.
Like I've always told you, I'm the
Flacco
biggest,
to the Steelers.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Flacco to the. I'm the biggest fan around here, but this guy knows stuff for real. Anyway, I mean, he could talk to you about all that stuff. So that's just a little snapshot. And then obviously, the Ravens will get the lowest winning seed. He think it would be Buffalo. I'm thinking it would be Cleveland. Because if they beat the Jaguars, I'm thinking Chiefs gonna take care of Buffalo. So, but we shall see. It's still got 2 games left. You know, we hope the Ravens win out so they stay number one seed, but Miami could somehow slip up in there if they beat Baltimore, which we'll get to the big games. That's one of the big games. Every game in the NFL is a big game, right? Every win is a huge win, right? Because it's tough sport. So things could change in the last couple of weeks. But in the NFC, currently, we got the Niners still holding on to the number one spot. Eagles, Lions, and Bucks at 2, 3, and 4. So that currently would match up Seattle. Gino doing work. He getting them. Gino back. I don't think they beat the Eagles though. I just. Then again, you you think he ain't got no faith in Jalen.
I don't. I don't. I mean, I think they beat the Eagles. I honestly, I think they because I feel like the Eagles would backdoor it in. Looking at the teams that's left to
Right.
even
So
try to pose a threat, the Vikings, Falcons, Packers. Like I don't think any of them would be able to go into Philadelphia and win that game. So I mean, ideally, Philadelphia is really waiting for that next round where
mhm.
that's going to be interesting.
So then we got the Rams at 6 currently. They would play the Lions. I think the Lions is the most disrespected team on the planet Earth right now. I'll talk to my man Smeeze about them, and I'll get to some other comments about how I feel about the Lions. But then we got the Cowboys at the Bucks. To me, I think a lot of motivation outside because these teams are obviously uber talented, right? Quarterback is slightly better in some situations, but receivers, running backs, all that, they all great athletes and great talent. So to me, at some point, motivation for one team got to outweigh the other. Like the Cowboys and Bucks, if that were to take place, if I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, I'm like, we getting revenge for when you beat Brady. Okay, that was your only playoff. Okay, we want revenge.
Yep.
I'm just using little silly things, but like the Lions, to me, they most disrespected. And I said before, a lot of people don't have faith in Jared Goff, but Jared Goff at least has won a conference championship game. He has played in the Super Bowl and ain't been back. But if I'm Dan Campbell, I'm telling my team every day how much they disrespect us. I don't think we're gonna be able to go in Dallas and win. I think they're gonna go in Dallas and punch Dallas in the mouth, just like they did week 1 with Kansas City, and then I think it was like week 4 or 5 when they went into Green Bay and had to put young Jordan Love back in his place. So I think they're gonna go into Dallas. I think they're gonna do work. People think that's gonna be a high scoring game. I think on the Lions side, I think this is where Dallas might not have one of their great home games. I'm just saying, could happen.
I
I,
think if that weekend, if that was the first round, the best game of all of that, the most exciting game, best game, most competitive game will be the Rams and Lions.
well, yeah, the
And
Rams
I
are
think
playing
the
the
Rams could win that game, which would send the Lions in turmoil.
Yeah, I say the Lions. Like, to me, they're gonna win their first playoff game. I think this is gonna be.
Not if it's the Rams, I don't think.
Rams have been playing well. You like the Rams as
I think
a just to
The Rams
sneak up
can
on.
throw the
Well, they
ball.
ain't sneaking
The
up on nobody
Rams
at this
can
point.
run the ball.
But oh,
The Rams have great coaching. Defense is a little bit suspect, but
they
there's
got
not a
us,
lot of great defense in the NFC.
and they
Bucks
got a
don't
Super
play good
Bowl
D.
winning
Lions
quarterback
don't.
too.
Rams don't. Eagles don't. Seahawks don't. Niners, Cowboys would probably be your only two teams that even remotely smell like defense in the NFC in the playoffs.
And but then they got the quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback.
They do.
So I mean, he's been there, done that.
They do.
But that'd be like the first round. So
Matches up well for a second round. I like, but I like. I mean, I think that picture probably is going to stay intact because Falcons. It'd be crazy if the Falcons make the playoffs with the way they played musical chairs at quarterback this year.
I was thinking,
And the Jets just couldn't get it right with that defense. That's damn near a Super Bowl caliber defense. You just couldn't get it right. Why y'all didn't call Flacco back? Why? Y'all could have been the Browns. No, rooting for Aaron to come back, huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
But the big games that we got coming up here, as far as all the games being big games, there's some truly big games this weekend. And a lot of like it's almost every game, even if a team is out of it, they could play spoiler to a team that's in it. You know what I mean? Like 49ers going to Washington.
I
Do
don't
they got
know.
a hangover?
I
Do they
don't.
got layover? Do they got like
Are
you know
they
what I
going?
mean?
I don't know. Are they
I'm not
going?
sure where they're going,
I
but
know. I
if
think
they
I
at
wrote
home,
them. I wrote them first. They're at home, I
okay.
believe. 49ers. I was just writing them down. But the reason I was pointing to this one is because Jacoby Brissett, he gets to go be thrown to the wolves. For
Yep.
the Niners, see, to me, the Niners is itching to get the taste of that Baltimore loss out of their mouth, Ravens out of their mouth. So they ain't gonna take no mercy on.
But the best deodorant is a win.
They ain't
Take
gonna,
something out.
they ain't gonna take no mercy on poor Jacoby. But yeah, I wrote down all the game lines and Cowboys. Like I said, I think the Lions are gonna go in there and not like beat them down 40-10 or nothing like that. I think they just gonna have a stronger game than what Vegas think. I think Cowboys are favored in that game.
I think the Lions lose that game.
To me, that's that eye candy game once again. And like I said from the beginning, Dak, he's got to win conference champions. He got to get there. But then I hope C.J. Stroud come back. They play the Titans, play the Texans, and the Dolphins and Ravens, of course. Steelers and Seahawks with Geno. Can he keep
That's
it
an
going?
interesting game right there.
I think the Steelers do go to Seattle in that one.
That's an interesting game
And then
because the Steelers need to win out. And the interesting thing next week, if the Ravens win this week, they'll have the number one bye.
right,
So week 18 would be irrelevant.
right, exactly.
Do you sit players versus playing that tough matchup against the Steelers?
I would
And I'm
say.
kind of 50-50 on it.
I know. I would play them to maybe the first quarter, just to get everybody still in the normal play mode, and then I'm like, nah, we snatching y'all because, see, that's
But
the
then,
thing.
but then if the Steelers beat the Seahawks and you let the Steelers basically give that game away, you now would have lost to the Steelers twice this year, and that probably would put the Steelers into the playoffs as the worst seed, and you'd have to see them again right after if they can win that
Right.
first game. Like it's an interesting dynamic and setup for that situation.
But then, just because you take out some of your stars, don't mean you plan on losing.
No, but you kind of taking your foot off the gas, and that's not what the Ravens do.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's
But
either
then
we
the
play
backups need.
we play the whole game or we don't play.
Well, then but then see if you got that mindset. That's what I'm saying. Like this is the mindset for this
Yeah.
game, fellas.
But also the Ravens feel like we can put in Huntley and go in and beat
That's
the
what I'm
Steelers still
saying.
with
So
Huntley.
that's what I mean. So okay, we'll see. I feel you wanting to push through to that last game just to keep everybody fresh and keep going. But in football, one little twist,
One injury away.
man, it's
One injury away.
if they lock up that number one seed. Like I said, I would go most a quarter with Lamar, and then maybe safe plays and shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
But then Beckham that game off might cramp up and lock up.
so it's gonna be interesting, people. Packers Vikings. So that should be interesting.
That's win or go home game right there. Whoever
Yeah.
loses that game is
Is out.
eliminated.
So
The Bengals Chiefs, the Bengals still got a fighting chance.
yeah, they do.
You know,
I think the Chiefs have bounced back
I think so too.
and played much better. Patrick had his worst game of the season.
The
So
Panthers Jags is interesting because there's probably gonna be no Trevor Lawrence in that game, so that makes that game interesting.
yeah,
Because the Panthers obviously want to win as much as possible to
yeah,
try not to give up that number one pick.
right. Bryce Young had his best game of the season. I was pointing it out to you earlier.
Yeah,
He threw for 312 yards. He pushed the ball down the field, 8.7 average. He was 23 for 36.
he looks like a real quarterback.
2 touchdowns, 0 INTs, and sacked 2 times. And he had the QBR. You know what's funny? I watched some of the sports shows. ESPN is the only show who talks about the QBR.
Yeah,
All the other shows use the quarterback rating.
yeah.
So,
But the QBR is
So-
supposed to look at the effectiveness and dynamics of the play versus the expected average of the play. And how did you do in that play?
wow, you remember that? Oh my goodness. We broke it all down in like the early weeks. It's crazy. ESPN proprietary. So I'm gonna just cover some of the stats real quickly here, and then we're moving on, people. What's Bill Belichick gonna say? Moving on or next week? How was this?
Moving on to next week.
Yeah. So that's what we do around here to play performance of black quarterbacks. So I'm just gonna touch on them here. We only had 3 in the AFC, believe it or not, and then because a lot of guys will get benched and quit, and just said I'm done with football for the year. I'm just kidding. But some of them have been benched.
Ritter for the fourth time.
Yeah. But Gino came back in that game. I mean, they were losing, and Gino brought them back. He was 25 for 36, 227 yards, 6.3 average, 2 TDs, 0 INTs. He was sacked 3 times, minus 12 yards. QBR was 74.4, and his rating was 104.7. Wow, this handwriting don't look like mine. It's crazy. I'm looking at it. Like, did I actually write that? I was in a different locale. I wasn't at home when I was doing this, so maybe my whole mindset and everything. Anyway, Jordan, that would be Jordan Love. He was 17 for 28, 219, 7.8. What I was glad to see, he wasn't throwing the ball as much as he had early on in the season. They had him throwing it 40, 50 times sometimes. But he had 2 touchdowns, 0 INTs. He was sacked 1 time for 12 yards. His QBR was 90.1 and rating was 109.1. You know, like I told you, I love talking about these black quarterbacks. I love his maturation and progress. I think he's going to be very competitive in the league in the coming years. That's just me. I hope so because I think the NFC could use some more competitiveness from these black quarterbacks. So Bryce Young, just touched on him. Justin Fields, another favorite. They love their quarter. They love their sports heroes in Chicago. Boy, I was telling Smeeze before. These people on Twitter are just losing their mind about Fields and the Bears. I don't know. But Fields was 15 for 27, 170 yards. He had 6.3 average, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. He was sacked, but didn't lose any yards. He had a QBR rating of 65.4, quarterback rating 71.5. I wrote down his rushing because he was 9 for 97 and 1 touchdown. But someone pointed out against the Cardinals, he only threw for like 50 something yards in the second half. And I was like, I was trying to specifically find that, but I read that somewhere. And I was like, damn. And Kyler did come back. He made that game somewhat interesting. And
Yeah.
it was a little closer than it started out being,
Yeah.
you know. So, but Justin Fields, like I said, they love him and hate him in Chicago. Remember, man, Smee's like he knows over all the numbers and what they could and couldn't do. Everybody talk about all the draft slots they should have. If they trade them, they keep them. So it's crazy. And then there was Dak. Dak lost in a close game. He was 20 for 32, 253 yards, 7.9 average, 2 touchdowns, 0 INTs. He was sacked 4 times for 11 yards. His QBR was 57.4 and his rating was 107.9. And then we had Jalen Hurts. The Eagles won in a close game. That's another thing. The NFL loves every game to go down to the last possession.
Yeah.
That see, that's what I'm saying.
Keeps you watching.
Right.
Keeps you watching.
And they love it. They don't care if your team win or lose, you know. But Jalen Hurts, he was 24 for 38, 301 yards, 7.9 average, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. He was sacked 1 time for 6 yards. He did have 8 rushes for 34 yards and 1 touchdown. His QBR was 67.2 and rating was 85.5. But what was funny, and I was looking at Tua's and Dak's numbers, and they were almost not Tua and Dak, but somebody, Tua and Gino, and how they both won their games, but their QBR and ratings are very different. And they almost have the exact amount of pass attempts and completions. And these ratings is just
I mean, the real main difference there is the 2 TDs for Gino, the 1 TD for Tua. You know what I mean? But then when you look at a per play per as they kind of try to break it down, you got Tua with 293 yards passing, but Gino only had 227.
yeah, it's just
Gino threw 36 times, Tua threw 27,
37.
37. I mean,
Yeah.
Gino completed 25 of them. Tua completed 24. So one more completion to one more pass attempt. But really, the only real difference
50
was
yardage.
the 50 yards, you know what I mean? More passing for Tua, one more touchdown for Geno. So
Yeah.
really, what's the value of that one touchdown when you're talking about a QBR of 65 to a QBR of 74? So that touchdown has to almost be about 10 points on the QBR scale. And then if you're looking at another thing per play, Geno was sacked 3 times for 12 yards. Tua sacked 1 time for 9 yards. So I figured those 2 less sacks
And you take those
probably
sacks.
should help that QBR because again, it's per play.
Right, but
what
then you take
happened on
the
that play?
sack yards off his passing, so Geno really only had 215 passing yards.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting stuff, people, with this football. So
Russ did his average 25 completions, 220 yards
all
passing,
the
2 touchdowns, 6.4. That's what Rush do.
and
all the
the
time.
quarterbacks in the AFC lost. So they all lost. Patrick Mahomes lost. That is one of his worst games of the season. And you know, and y'all know how I get with losers. We know Patrick Mahomes ain't a loser. They just lost this past week. But
And the week before, and the week before,
they're gonna
and the
win
week
this week.
before.
Which brings me to the closing thing here, which is the NFL's theme of if not next week, if not this week, next week, if not this year, next year, we're running out of weeks for next week. Okay, they got 2 weeks left to get
For
it right.
next week.
And then it's on to next year. Okay, all the hopes and dreams. And in 2 weeks, 18 teams will be eliminated and they will be sad. Okay. And then for another 2 weeks, you're gonna, then we'll get another 7 or eliminated
Yeah.
until we get to the final 4. And then eventually it'll be one person holding the Lombardi Trophy, Lamar Jackson.
Hey, one thing we do know, it won't be one of those 4 that holds 40% of the Super Bowl trophies already. That we do know. That we do know. Because the
Yeah.
Chiefs ain't going, so it ain't
What?
gonna be nobody
Okay.
multiple champions.
I can't have all my black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. So only one can
Uh-uh.
win. But we always talk, we do our little post talk stuff before. I think if somehow Dak Prescott can win the Super Bowl, he will be the king of Cowboy land if he can somehow win. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, he'll be up there. I don't know if he trump
He
Aikman.
He
'Cause
would just
Aikman got
because
a couple of them,
I know Aikman got
but
3.
the fact that he, you know, what I'm
It's just
saying,
because in this
is
era
there. Yeah,
with all the
yeah,
hype and everything,
yeah,
people have forgotten about Troy.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
but it'd be like Dak Prescott. This is the newest Cowboy hero.
Hold up.
Right. Anyway, people, that's it this week. Back Forum, BQF. I can't get my words out. BlackQBsInEffect.com. Good luck to your team. We'll see you next week.
Peace out, babe.